Today was day 25 of the Sean Diddy Combs criminal trial, with text messages taking center stage, messages between Combs and Cassie Ventura discussing plans for upcoming freak-offs. Perhaps far drier than the more lurid videos of the actual sexcapades that were shown in court to this jury. But was there evidentiary value to these, and which side did they actually help? Plus, messages between Combs and his chief of staff, Christina Coram. Are they the silver bullet that the prosecution has been looking for and needs to prove the racketeering conspiracy charge? All of this as the government signals it will rest its case by Friday morning at the latest. And the defense is now saying it needs 2 to 5 days to put on its case. Wait a minute. What happened to 2 weeks? We will discuss. I'm criminal trial attorney Sara Azari, and this is Serving Justice. We are breaking down all things Diddy in his criminal trial. And today I'm joined by Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor and the veteran host at the Law and Crime Network, and NewsNation reporter Tommy Christaldi, who has been in the courthouse daily covering this story. Thank you both for joining me. Sorry for the delay in getting started. Let me go to Jesse first. The defense spotlighted text messages between Cassie Ventura and Combs that might suggest that she exercised free will to make decisions during the course of a relationship with Combs. And I'm just thinking, is this successful strategy or nah?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on Serving Justice. It only took forever for you to invite me. I feel very insulted, but it's fine. It's fine. It's a separate conversation.
Back to my bosses.
let's talk about it. The jury has seen a lot of these messages before. Remember, they came out during a summary witness. Somebody, when you have this voluminous amount of digital material, text messages, phone call records, travel receipts, kind of condensing it down. I think this is key. I think this is absolutely key for the defense. Remember, one of the names of the game for them is trying to say that everything was consensual, that these alleged victims were willing participants. And the more the jury sees now the time frame, right? This whole witness for the past 2 days, it's all about the time frame, the travel receipts, the payment records. So now if you're seeing these messages from Cassie where she's talking about, I want to FO so bad, or I want to be sexier or nastier, or setting the freak-offs up, it just complicates this case for the prosecution. And now it is not only just taking nebulous text messages about her allegedly consenting, but tying them up to specific events. This is exactly what the defense needs to do. And also on top of the fact, basically saying that whatever is presented by the prosecution, it's not racketeering, it's not sex trafficking, it's not transportation to engage in prostitution, which I think is a harder case for them to prove.
Yeah, that's hard. Yeah.
That's a tough one to defend. Yeah. I just think that these messages are exactly what is going to be debated by this jury when they actually go back to the deliberation process.
Yeah. And I think when you take these messages and you go back to Cassie's testimony, that awful assault at the hotel in Los Angeles occurred during the course of a freak-off. Essentially, she wanted to leave and he was trying to keep her. And I think to me, that was like the worst part of her testimony, because it's like, okay, there are times where she wants to have freak-offs and has men that she prefers, like Jane did or whatnot. But then when she doesn't want to have freak-offs, it gets violent. You know, that to me was it would be one thing if that assault, occurred on a regular night, not a freak off night. That would be something else. But it was during the course of a freak off marathon, essentially.
Can I just one thing real quick? I think there are 2 concrete examples for sex trafficking for Cassie Ventura. Okay, one of them you nailed on the head. The jury accepts that she was leaving a freak off and is beaten and dragged back in the direction of a freak off. So now you have these freak offs happening in different locations. You have a commercial sex worker, you have violence, force, fraud, coercion. The other more concrete example, and by the way, somebody could say no, somebody could say yes 9 times out of 10. The one time they say no, there you go. But
it's still rape.
But the other important time is she claims she was on a plane. Sean Combs sitting next to her, shows her videos of these sex tapes, threatens to release them. They land. So now you have a travel component. You have a threat component. He demands a freak off. he gets a freak off.
Freak off, yeah.
That's exactly
That's
where.
true. I forgot about the jet incident. Tommy, the defense played sexually explicit footage for the jury during cross-examination of Special Agent, I think it's Deliasa Penland. The public couldn't see it. We couldn't see it, obviously, but some jurors had very visible reactions to it, with at least 6 of them kind of like holding their chins. I mean, are they, picking up their jaws from dropping, or have they just had enough of this?
Yeah, I definitely think it's the latter. I saw the people sitting there like this. I saw the people sitting there like this. I saw a few of them covering their mouths a bit. And then I saw a few staring off into space, fiddling with their headphones. Not to say that this isn't incredibly graphic video and depicting these things that I'm sure they don't want to be seeing, but they've seen it before. They've heard about it before. The big thing that I wrote down was that the jurors were being very stoic. They were concentrated. They had furrowed brows, but they weren't gasping. There were no shocks. I didn't see anybody shaking their head. I heard from some other people that they saw some jurors sort of looking a little bit disgusted. That's not something that I saw personally. To me, it seems as though, and especially with the way that this witness went today and how drawn out it was, by the time the video is rolled around, they've seen it, they've heard about it. And right. I don't think that at this point in the game, it's anything earth shattering.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we were in week 1, it would have a different shock factor. The still images clearly did. And the testimony did. But at this point, they're like, okay, what else you got? We get it. There were freak offs and it was whatever, Jesse, was it smart to play more of that explicit footage that Tommy's talking about, especially when we saw such a negative response from members of the jury? I guess it was played some more on cross-examination, I think.
Yep. Here's what I think. And by the way, I say this with the caveat, I don't know what those videos show. None of us know what those videos
I've heard it's really boring. According to Mark Garagos, there ain't nothing special or freaky about them. But
here's why I think they might have played it. So I'm making an assumption here. I'm making an assumption. But if you couple the videos with the text messages from Cassie, where she's seeming to show a level of consent, if the videos show her, for lack of a better word, enthused or encouraging whatever's happening, I think that doubles down to the idea of, is she really a victim of sex trafficking? Look, I think we can all agree she was a victim of a toxic relationship. The question of the jury was, is she a victim of sex trafficking? So presuming those videos, those specific moments are beneficial in a way to the defense, you couple it with the text messages. Remember why they did this. They said to this witness, you are presenting all these summary charts of all these travel receipts and all these cash payments and all these really bad texts and coordination with all your inner circle. You left a lot out. You left a lot of the text messages that are actually beneficial to our case. So I think they're trying to provide a lot more context and the complete picture.
Well, and defense attorneys, I'm the one that always goes in with the context, right? Because the prosecution's always cherry picking what messages work for them, what images work for them. And I go, wait a minute, give me the rest of the phone. Give me the Celebrate extraction so I could see what else is on there, because it's the context that then sort of lets the jury see the full picture. And I think one of the things the defense is going to argue, Jesse, tell me if you disagree, is that, the prosecution was overzealous. They have charged him with things that they can't prove, that the crimes that he committed were state crimes, not these very serious federal crimes, and that they went so overboard and they were so overly zealous that they started cherry picking what works and just gave the special agent, what they liked and not the totality of the evidence. And also to the point of the defense showing the videos, I think that's, it's a tough decision in this case. Like, do we really kind of ingrain this in the jury's brain? Or is it necessary to show them? I get why the defense had to do this, but at the same time, I think it's a hard decision. Like, do we want to really kind of, but like, I think at this point, the jury was numb to this idea anyway, like you said.
Real quick to answer your question. I mean, look at Jane, right? Jane's testimony was not particularly that helpful to the prosecution. I think there are aspects to it, right? When she talks about being forced into these hotel nights, even after she was sick and exhausted, and the plethora of text messages where she's expressing reluctance, whether it's reluctance because she feels like she's not getting the same kind of attention as other lovers of Sean.
The
case is, if she didn't want to do it, she didn't want to do it. And of course, there's the alleged violent episode and him saying, take this pill, go back in there. But I think with Jane, you make the exact point, what we're going to expect to hear in closing arguments. The prosecution, it's not even, they'll go on, the defense will say, we didn't even attack Jane. We were just saying, everything that you say, even if we take it as true, the prosecution is transforming your experiences into a sex trafficking charge, into a racketeering conspiracy. It doesn't add up. And of course, there's issues with other witnesses, Brianna Bengolan, Mia, and I think they basically say, why is he the only defendant in this racketeering conspiracy case? Sure, other people have taken immunity, but it's a stretch. Now, I'll tell you, we could talk maybe a little bit later about racketeering and where I think some of the benefits are. But yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, forget about Jane. I mean, at times I was like, is she a prosecution witness or defense witness? And as she was walking out of the courtroom, she hugged the AUSA and she hugged Tenny Garagos. So, I mean, to me, that was a hug to Diddy, that this is an ongoing relationship. Her rent is still being paid. I mean, forget about it. Tommy, what about those messages between Combs and KK? Christina Coram is chief of staff. Are they what the prosecution has been looking for? I mean, I've been saying, where is she? She's a co-conspirator, right? Is that what they're sort of substituting in lieu of her actual testimony?
Yeah, it sure seems so. I mean, we got to look both yesterday and a little bit today at a lot of these messages that she sent to him, that she sent on his behalf or while he's trying to rein him in. And I think that it really just speaks to what the prosecution has been claiming all along, which is that she knew about all of these things. She was aware. You see when she helps get one of the escorts added to a hotel reservation, or she messages him. There was a big thing after Cassie's lawsuit came out where she said, you cannot lie to me. We have to be on the same page. That's how we don't end up in this mess. I think that I certainly haven't covered enough trials in my short career to know why she's not testifying, and I'm sure one of you could inform me. But these texts to me over the past 2 days do seem to be a pretty adequate substitute. And I think that, though, something that really came up today, as we've been talking about, is that it does feel very apparent that a lot of these exhibits for these summary witnesses were cherry-picked, and the prosecution did choose just the messages that would support their case. You mentioned how you questioned whether or not Jane was, a witness for the prosecution. And I had the same thought at one point today. And that's not so much about KK, but I found it astounding that every single entry on that chart, every single freak off or trip or meeting or whatever they were calling them, there was a response. The defense said, well, what about this text where Cassie actually said, let's do it? I think that what we've been seeing through these summary charts is that while they work really strongly on a direct examination, obviously they present your case exactly as you want it to be.
Right. They fall apart. They fall apart on cross.
I wouldn't say that they fell apart entirely, but especially today, I was like, wow.
I mean, look, all the defenses, look, I know the defenses, we'll talk about this, putting on some witnesses, but they don't have to. All they have to do is poke holes in the prosecution's case. And they've done a lot of poking. The question is, how far is this jury willing to go to call this consensual versus coercive? And you know what? To your point, what you brought up about the question about what happened to these co-conspirators, that's my next question to Jesse. It's obvious. I don't think we're going to hear from KK or D-Rock. And typically, these individuals who are clear co-conspirators would be entering into a cooperation plea agreement with a specific stipulation that they would testify if the target goes to trial. And I don't think they're being called. So what do you attribute this to? I mean, what do you think happened to them? Like, is the defense calling them with immunity, or where are they?
Well, it would be really bad for the prosecution if the defense called these witnesses, because the jury's going to be wondering why they're not called. And particularly when a number of witnesses, assistants, Eddie Garcia, the security guard, have been granted immunity. Brendan Paul has been granted immunity, is going to testify. The only thing I can imagine, and I think Tommy hit it on the head, is what's the value of Christina Coram? Well, if it's more of her messages and we can make the point that we're trying to make, we'll use the messages. If she's going to come on the stand and not help us to really solidify the idea that there was criminal conspiracy, a criminal agreement that
I get that. But, as a government prosecutor, I would call her lawyer months ago and I'd say, we're indicting her. Either she comes in and pleads pre-indictment, or we're going to go ahead and indict her and we'll just seal the indictment until Diddy's done.
But she has to testify truthfully, right? Let's say she goes, there was no criminal agreement. Yeah, I agree.
Well, but I think the government would go ahead and indict her anyway. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is if they don't get what they want from her, which is the testimony, truthful testimony, they'll go ahead and indict her because she is a co-conspirator. Why would they let her go just because she's refusing to testify truthfully?
No, you make a great point. You make a great point. I think that's one of the concerns because we all thought she was going to be the last witness, right?
The grand finale.
She has been mentioned by every single witness in this case. And if you're talking about racketeering conspiracy, he can't agree with himself. He had to agree with somebody else.
Yeah.
Yes, there's the staff members, there's the assistants. I mean, the chief of staff who's been intimately involved in all these conversations. It is a question mark. It is a question mark why she's not ultimately testifying. Will it be the end of the prosecution's case? Not necessarily, but I think it is going to be a point of conversation in that jury deliberation room. I would take bets that people were going to question why she wasn't called.
Well, and I think the defense will argue it too. You heard about Christina Coram from this person, from this person, from this person. Where is she? Why didn't the government put her up? Because there was no conspiracy.
And by the way, I think one of the defense's first witnesses is going to be the former head of HR for Sean Combs. I think that goes to the idea. Really, what were your job duties exactly? Yeah. Trying to fight the forced labor allegation, part of racketeering.
Well, and I think I for sure they're going to put up their own abuse expert. You know, we heard from Don Hughes. Now we're going to hear from a defense expert, and that person better really lay out. I mean, although I think these are blind experts, that neither of them have examined Cassie or Jane or Combs to opine on the specific dynamics of these relationships. But I think that to the extent allowable, I think that expert has to try to really explain the nuanced differences between a coerced victim of sex trafficking and someone who's made an adult consensual decision to engage in a very freaky lifestyle. You know, I mean, that really needs, I've never had a case like this. But it's so nuanced, you know? So I'm looking forward to seeing what the defense expert also has to say. The next one goes to both of you. Your reaction to that final text that was set, it was between Cassie and Combs days after the hotel assault, basically ending the special agent's testimony on redirect. The prosecution got up and asked one question, I believe, saying, the Ventura writes, when you get fucked up the wrong way, this is what she's saying to Combs, you always want to show me that you have the power and you knock me around. I'm not a rag doll. I'm someone's child. Your reaction?
Tommy, I'll let you go first.
You know, I think that was a strong way to end, for sure. But I think that the unfortunate thing is that so much of what was presented on the not so much of, but part of what was presented on the cross-examination came after that. It came significantly after that. And so I think that the domestic assault of it all is horrible. It's terrible. Yeah. It's bad. But I think that by the end of the day, and just after, and I'm just one guy, but after being basically battered all day battered was a poor choice of words. Yeah. All day being presented with, here is another text where Cassie says she wants it. Here's another text where Cassie says she wants it. I totally understand her saying, don't beat me up. I'm someone's kid. Like,
well, but Tommy, what stood out to me about that message is she says always. So, you know, the defense can't really get up and say this was just a horrible, isolated, you know, that this is not what he would usually do, you know. I mean, that argument goes out of the window, I think. I mean, I think it just is but you know, look, the prosecution is constantly bringing it back to the tape, constantly bringing it back to that incident. Without that, I don't think they would even be prosecuting him, frankly.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes.
So look, I think that video and that text are some of the strongest pieces of evidence. Why? They should say in a closing argument, you know why she didn't walk away? You know why she didn't fight back? You know why she didn't stand up further? Because that's what's waiting for her. She doesn't do anything the way he wants, right? And by the way, this doesn't get talked about enough. If the jury accepts Dawn Richard's testimony that she witnessed Combs punch Cassie in front of high-profile celebrities and no one stepped in, no one did anything? Does that not go to a power dynamic? What on earth do you expect Cassie Ventura to do? Right. And I think that that's really where the prosecution needs to go in. There's only so much. So you take away the idea of the complicating factors, why she didn't leave, and the complicated emotions and the dynamic between an alleged abuser and a victim. What did you expect her to do in that position?
I mean, forget about Dawn Richard. She was a big fat liar. She wasn't fat, but she was a liar. But I do think that someone was asking this, which is a great question. I think some of the viewers might want to know, do they have to believe Jane, Mia, and Cassie for the sex trafficking? No, they can believe one testimony, but Cassie's a different story. And it really just takes one victim, right, Jesse?
It does. And look, again, remember, there's two charges here for sex trafficking. Yeah. There's Jane and there's Cassie. However, why did we see so many of these other alleged victims? To corroborate the testimony, what they saw, particularly of Cassie, but also remember, what is it? The opening 3 paragraphs of Sean Combs' indictment, pick whichever one. There's been a number of superseding indictments, establishing a pattern of abuse and sexual exploitation of women. So whether jury accepts.
Yeah, right? Sure. You need a pattern for the racketeering conspiracy. The other thing, though, I think the problem that they have without, and I'm still processing this, but without, if they just went with Cassie and didn't bring in, let's say, Jade, they need to have the charge, the sort of the crux of the racketeering, the charge that they're going after, which is sex trafficking. And I want to talk to you about the relationship between these two counts. That has to be within the statute of limitations, which is 5 years under federal law. And then that then opens the door to go back 10 years at a time to the beginning of time under the RICO statute. So Cassie is way past the last 5 years. That was 2016, right? So I think that's another reason why they needed to have, like the underlying crime needed to be within the last, the 5 years since the indictment. I want, I think as the prosecution is getting close to resting its case, it's really important, Jesse, for everyone to understand the connection between these two counts. Does the government have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt the sex trafficking in order to get him on racketeering conspiracy, or are these completely unrelated? I'm not bringing up the prostitution because he is absolutely guilty of that.
I mean, what do you want to talk about with the travel receipts of the
right now? Yeah.
By the way, it's up to 10 years in prison. Okay. They're connected, but they're different. What do I mean by that? So as I said, he's facing 5 counts. 2 of those counts are sex trafficking by force, fraud, and coercion. The jury will have to do a separate analysis with respect to Jane and Cassie. Racketeering conspiracy, there are a number of underlying predicate crimes. Sex trafficking is one of them. If the jury comes back and says, I don't believe Jane, I don't believe Cassie, I don't believe this whole sex trafficking business. There is arson, there's forced labor, there's kidnapping, there's bribery, there's drug offenses. And I think that some of the strongest parts of the prosecution's case have been the testimony of Capricorn Clark and Kid Cudi and Eddie Garcia, where you're establishing that Sean Combs was allegedly engaging in different crimes, using his businesses, using his company resources, using his staff, and you separate it from the sex trafficking. And you could say, maybe not beyond a reasonable doubt, but right now the prosecution can present a case. He's essentially a gang leader. He's using these different. But
the purpose. So yes, I agree. There's a lot of evidence that go to the methods and means of the criminal enterprise. There's some evidence of an enterprise. I'm not sure. Anyway, whatever, like how criminal it is, but and there's predicate acts, right? And I have issues with those too, because like the arson of Kid Cudi's car was, there's no prosecution or investigation. It just was speculative at the end of the day. But let's just say the jury believes all that. The purpose of this criminal enterprise is the sexual gratification of its leader, which is Sean Combs. So if they don't believe, if they believe that these were consensual lifestyle choices and that this was not illicit sexual activity like trafficking, then I don't think you have a purpose for the racketeering.
Well, would you agree that I'll take your definition as true, that the purpose of this criminal enterprise, whether it's and another, if the mafia, to make money, making money in and of itself is not illegal. But if the idea,
Right.
if the idea is his sexual gratification to get what he wanted, it doesn't have to be sex trafficking. If it's to get what he wanted, sexual gratification, committing all these crimes to do it, I think they have a case.
Wow, man. I don't know how serious Donald Trump was about pardoning him, but because this is, look, I think he's a bad guy. He's done bad things, but I do have a problem with how he's charged. I think, and also, by the way, the prostitution, I mean, it's like, it's not the crime of the century. I mean,
can I ask Tommy a question? Tommy, you have seen all of the evidence regarding transportation to engage in prostitution. What has the defense done? I mean, how have they limited that in any which way? I haven't seen it.
None that I've noticed. It's interesting because I have felt like he was cooked on that charge in particular. They're going to find him guilty of that since day one. It's in fact the only one of the charges that right now I feel confident making a prediction publicly on. The others I think could go either way, but that one, he did that. Like he pretty,
of course, yeah. I mean, he's flying male escorts and prostitutes from, he had his favorites in Atlanta and elsewhere, flying them out to Miami and New York and all that. But sometimes it helps the defense when a jury has something. The jury obviously is disgusted with this defendant. He's not a likable guy, right? And so there is this desire to get him on something because this is a bad man. He did some really bad things. So in a way, I think I would be like, fine, go ahead and get my client on the prostitution, right? He's good for that. I mean, I wouldn't argue that necessarily, but the idea that the jury has something to find him guilty on, I think makes it easier for the jury as opposed to like coming back with a not guilty on everything when they know this guy is such a bad guy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think having something to split the baby sometimes could make it easier for a jury to, if they're struggling, I don't know. I think this is going to be a long deliberation here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, what are we doing for July 4th? Are we serving justice or what?
How many times have you used that tagline?
I'm serving justice.
One criminal at a time.
Yeah, you got to come back, Jesse. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you, Tommy. And thank you to all our viewers. We are covering this case daily. We will be back tomorrow. And for this trial, please stay with NewsNation.